today's session, we're going to be talking about how to win and expand more deals with mutual plans. And we have an awesome group of panelists. We're going to be discussing our learnings around ways to collaborate with customers, build repeatable sales processes, and hopefully, make customers successful and expand with them. So that's what we're going to be talking about in the next few minutes here. But maybe before we dig in, we can do a quick round of intros, maybe 30 seconds where you're at, maybe, highlight of some of the careers and why folks out there should be listening to some of your advice. We got an awesome group of experienced startup sales leaders here. So maybe I can kick off. So Ross Rich, CEO and co-founder of Accord. We help people do this with our mutual plan software. And previous to Accord, I was at Stripe as one of the first business/sales hires back in 2015 as we were going from a product-led motion to sales-led and figuring out how to do that in a collaborative, repeatable way. So I'll pass things off to, maybe we can go backwards in the other direction. Daniel, if you want to share a quick intro here.
Yeah, so I currently lead the commercial team at Kurios. We're an edtech startup. We serve the B2B market in Latin America. So I guess I'm the one furthest away from the States right now. And before that, I was the first salesperson in Kurios after the CEO, of course. And before that, I was in a totally different industry in infrastructure and energy. I ended up kind of transitioning into commercial roles and then finally into tech sales, which I'm really excited about and passionate about. So we're really excited to be here again.
Yeah, awesome. Someone to learn a lot from, taking the plunge from, first employee at a startup, YC-backed company, Kurios doing really cool things. Awesome. And Ryan, how about yourself?
So I mentioned I was in politics and sold boxes. And so I didn't get into technology till I was in my early 30s. I worked at Salesforce for 3 years as an individual contributor, and then went to Clio Practice Management for 3.5 years as they scaled from 10 million to 35 million, and then came back to Salesforce in 2017 as an RVP, where I've been for the last 5 years. And I love Salesforce, but at the end of this month will be the end of my career at Salesforce, and I'm moving to Okta to run the Canadian commercial sales team.
Cool. Awesome. Heard really good things about their sales dog. So congrats on that. And yeah, a lot to learn from Ryan as well in this session. And Jocelyn, how about yourself?
Yep, my name is Jocelyn Brown, and I'm the head of customer success and sales at Hypercontext, which is a product-led growth company. And we're moving into adding some sort of sales assist motions. So early in developing the related sales plans and mutual action plans. But my selling career started in media. I sold banner ads and the like in early internet days. And then my software career really started at a company called Eloqua. And I spent the first 9 years or so of my software career in customer success, and then went on to lead both customer success, account management, and sales, including sort of inside sales, BDRs, as well as the sort of strategic team. So coming first in through the customer success side and then evolving into sales.
Love that, which is so important. I think customer success is finally getting its well-deserved recognition these days. Not just in the last few years, but also in the last few weeks. I've never heard so many conversations about NRR, net dollar retention, renewals, all of this good stuff. I think people are really, starting to better understand the power of not just closing deals. And we've talked a lot about this in SaaS and like the renewal model, all that kind of stuff, but it's been really cool to see. And I think, shout out to Gainsight and the team there for, I think, really being on the forefront of championing CS as an organization. But to kick things off, everyone here has a lot of experience and really excited to have them share this with the community. Before we dive in specifically to talking about how to win and expand more deals with mutual plans, I thought it might be helpful just to get a sense of what people are seeing in kind of B2B sales and success right now with this massive shift we're seeing with product-led growth and buyer expectations really change. Now people can buy a Tesla or a house, online. I think there's been a huge shift in the expectation of buyers and the way that sales is really done in success. And maybe I can kick things off with some thoughts. What I've seen is buyers want to talk to sellers less than ever, but debatably need to talk to sellers more than ever because of the added complexity of buying processes today, the number of stakeholders probably doubling every year that needs to be involved in a buying decision, the complexity of API-based, integration-based solutions. And that's been, I think, one of the most interesting kind of, two factors colliding. People want to buy stuff online. They're able to sign up, land and expand, all those good things. They're in the B2C world. Amazon, get the thing right now, compare the price, all that good stuff. That's not the average in the B2B world. But the complexity of the solutions going up in the B2B space. So that's been a really interesting confluence of things that I've seen. But curious to get your thoughts on this, Jocelyn.
Yeah, I would say that they don't really need to go to salespeople just for the baseline information or how to use the tool. They can try it out. But the context for how it fits into their world, getting a real sense and understanding of kind of the long-term plan, what the sort of stages are, what to expect, requires a conversation, or is best served with a conversation. And certainly with product-led growth, people are customers almost immediately. So that concept of there being a real divide between prospect and customer kind of disappears. So then the role of, customer success and sales gets really quite blurred. So it's more about trying to meet the customer where they are in their journey with the right resource to help them get to the next stage and to see their future with you. So there's certainly a lot of storytelling and a lot more about context. You're not a gateway towards the information. They can get the information wherever they want. They need the stories. They need you to paint the future. They need to understand how to take the steps to get to where they want to go ultimately.
Totally.
Maybe I'll add from a different perspective, because obviously very, very important as we think about the sale and then success afterwards. Part of what we do today is still focused on, are you forecasting deals and are you closing them at the right time? That probably is the most important thing we do at Salesforce. And if you do that right, it means you're doing everything else right. But I think to Jocelyn's point, there is a change in the way, what the expectation that we have from our buyers. They don't want to be sold to. They don't want to feel like you're salesy. Right? You don't want to go to a car dealership. When you go there, you have your backup. The minute they try any of their moves, we know all the moves because we can read about it online, and we're resistant and we're angry with it. And I think that translates to a sale with a customer, where if you don't create these mutual plans, where you take away the uncomfortableness, you plan out the map, so they understand exactly what you're going to do, what the expectations are to get you to a yes or no. And then if it's a yes, what success looks like. You create a level of comfort where you're now seen as a partner versus the sneaky salesperson who's always just trying to work on your timeline based on your agenda. And so that's the one thing I noticed, is that the buyers are more resistant. They always have been resistant to salespeople trying to do things on their own timeline, but they're especially resistant today because of the buying experiences that we have. And so taking away that feeling of anxiety that buyers may have, and seeing it like we're partners and we're trying to deliver value, and we should be okay with making decisions and planning out success if you see value. I think that's an important, something we talk about a lot at Salesforce for sure.
Yeah. I wanted to add something, a little bit exciting from a different part of the world. We have the mix of buyers and sellers is really interesting in LATAM. Some buyers are really looking for this partnership. Some are a bit, behind in the wave of moving towards this collaborative point of view. So it's really exciting, that part where we have to not only evolve as sellers, as a team, and building these mutual plans, but also helping them see the benefits of what we're actually trying to do with them.
Totally. And that kind of speaks to the resistance, Ryan, I think you mentioned, right? Like, some people haven't had a great, most people haven't. I mean, the average buying process, unfortunately, I've been on the other side of it in the last couple of years here building a core, and the bar is very low, unfortunately. I'm obviously a huge champion, been a seller my whole career, huge champion for B2B sales and reps and sales leaders, but the bar on average is not great. So I think a lot of people, Daniel, like you're mentioning, haven't necessarily seen the other side and this transformation of like this consultative, partner-based, long-term approach to working with customers. So yeah, it's not surprising that some folks might be a bit wary of like, hey, like some people are like, don't even use the word partner with me. Like, that's not where you are. You're a vendor. I'm buying this thing. And you're like, you're only going to get so much out of that, partnership if that's the way that you approach it. And yeah, I think you got to approach different conversations and different customers completely different if they kind of don't see that light or, you know, don't want to approach the conversation with you in that way. Cool.
You made a comment about sort of the increase in the number of people in a buying cycle. I think the other thing about having some sort of a mutual action plan that goes beyond the actual signature or whatever event kind of converts them into a paid customer also gets the right and more people into the conversation earlier. Because if the end date that you're talking about is just the sale, you are working on your timeline and that can create that friction. If the end is the outcome or some sort of an evolution of their process or whatever they're trying to get to, then they start thinking about the other people that are going to be impacted downstream. You may get a richer conversation upstream, less friction as you get closer, more buy-in, more multi-threaded, like all that kind of stuff. So if you're also sort of painting what that picture is down the line, you're probably going to get a better and more diverse set of people in the consideration cycle that's going to create a stronger relationship. And you're not going to lose the buyer to the people using the tool after, which is a really tough thing in CS where the people that evaluated are all of a sudden gone and you're dealing with a whole set of other people. If we could bring them all together, because the way we talk about it is very long-term, you're going to build the right relationships right from the outset.
And I have a comment there. It's again from an angle of a salesperson trying to get a deal across the line, which is, it's not just what we're trying to do, but that is our first goal, and then to ensure they're successful. Yours is nice about long-term success. My angle will be about how do we actually get it across the line. And there's two things I think having that mutual plan that goes past the close date is beneficial. One, it shows that you're still there. Like we set proper KPIs for what success looks like, and you share that you're a partner, that you're going to be there as they go down that journey, right? That you believe in your product. I think that helps convince them if they're looking at your product versus another. I think the other strategy from a sales perspective is, I don't want you to look at the finish line, which is when you sign. I want you to look past it. It's not if you sign, it's when you sign, and it changes the psychology of the buyer to say, yeah, okay, all right, I am buying. I kind of already see what it's like to be in the car, and then you envision what it looks like once you've driven the car, a month later. I think that helps move buyers along, or you find out right away if there's a reason why you're not going to get the deal, if it's not going to happen, or if there's some type of objection. Like those conversations open up
you de-risk the deal.
That's right.
Yeah, definitely part of that strategy of the more people, more diverse, is de-risking that you don't get to the 11th hour and somebody new comes in and kills it, right? So some of that long-term thinking is about de-risking, because you make sure you get all the voices that could say no exposed right at the outset.
Yeah. Totally. I think what would be interesting is getting a sense of each of your sales processes and how something like this, like in practice, impacts it. So maybe I can kick things off and kind of share what I mean. So with Accord, we kind of have two segments that we sell into. One, the startup segment, we have a free trial. People typically go in, set them up with a free trial, hook them up with a few templates and playbooks. It's a very like sales assisted, product led type of motion, 1 or 2 call close. And we typically don't use, kind of a mutual plan until they made a decision and we're kind of helping them get to success. So it's like, hey, here's the thing you want to click on, you want to see, what the actual thing is like. You already have an initiative around this, and we're going to help you get to success by, hey, this is how you're going to train your reps on it. This is how, we're going to build your playbook, et cetera. Pretty straightforward. But with larger deals, with what we call kind of the growth segments, it's a much longer process. There's, instead of just maybe the VP of sales or head of sales and a top rep, there's ops, enablement, VPs, managers, directors, reps that need to sign off. And that's when it's so important, as Jocelyn mentioned, to get the right people involved up front, because you don't want to go through this process. You don't want to have all these calls, get everyone excited, and then have ops, jump in at the end when we're trying to sign it and say, hey, oh, this doesn't have this integration. Okay, we can't move forward. Or, have enablement come in and be like, hey, actually, in terms of what tools we're going to roll out in the game plan, we're going to bring in Medic first, and we're going to bring in Gong for call recording. That's how we're going to help coach. And then, okay, this thing's going to come in 9 months later. So super important to, when some of those longer deals, to just figure out, both for the seller side, as Ryan was mentioning, like, how do we get this deal done? But also for the buyer, most people haven't bought I mean, maybe other than Salesforce, like the tool that we're talking about, right? Like most people haven't bought a Hypercontext. Most people haven't bought a Kurios or an Accord or whatever the startup is. Helping them understand what that process looks like is exactly what they want. I've been on the other side. I haven't bought these tools that we're buying right now, Full Story, Gong, etc. Having someone explain to me, this is what it looks like. Okay, this is what the next 2 weeks look like. These are the types of meetings that we recommend. This is what works for folks. And I can be like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Oh, this doesn't make sense for us because we do it this way. And just understanding that process from day one, I always feel like we have this curse of knowledge where because we do it so often, because it seems so simple to us, just having that conversation makes such a massive difference. So that's why we find, again, especially in like, if it's not a 1 or 2 call close, even if it's 3, 4, 5, and there's a few people involved, just walking them through that is a great way of building rapport, adding value to the conversation, helping you close the deal, but also helping them understand what the process is going to look like. So that's kind of how we think about using these mutual plans with customers.
Just a comment. It's something that should be part of every sales motion, right? And I think that we all understand that. It doesn't mean that it is. And
Yes.
I can say that because Salesforce, we're I think one of the premier selling organizations in the world with a premier product. And we will on a yearly basis have a conversation about let's get back to basics and let's make sure we're not missing mutual plans. Lots of noise that comes through to every person today, every salesperson, and sometimes you forget the blocking and tackling of selling. And so we'll go through a conversation that says, okay, let's make sure we're not only focusing on mutual plans, we'll talk about making sure they get out at a certain time, right? So that we're ahead of any problems in deals. Again, it's more sales focused. That is where I'm coming from. So I like the idea of creating that discipline where it just becomes part of your everyday motion. So you don't have to move away and always be correcting. To your point, Ross, having this type of tool, I think makes it better for your sellers, and I think it also makes it a much more enjoyable experience for the buyers as well.
That the word mutual, I think, is one of the important words in there, because unlike your internal sales process, which is fairly fixed and drives a lot of reporting and other things, the mutual nature and co-creation of the plan is probably one of the things that's the biggest, what I think makes the biggest improvement or development of that plan, in the sense that you maybe start with something where you're teaching this is what it typically looks at, but then you're asking them to say, where does it differ for you, so that you're exposing your side of the story, but you're also inviting them to edit it and expose their side of what goes on. So that one of the mistakes I probably made really early on when we were doing success plans at Eloqua is like we had sort of the perfect success plan of how you would move through the tool. And it became a long list of things that never got done and actually made the customer feel bad. So that idea that it's truly mutual and that what you're doing is giving them a starting place, but inviting feedback and editing it. So knowing that the process is consistent, but in fact, the actual form factor is flexible and should look different with each customer, at least a little bit. Because if you're just applying another process similar to your internal sales process, that's what it's going to feel like. It's still going to feel like you're driving towards your outcome.
And you said, sorry, the other comment is the term that we use from a sales perspective used to be a close plan.
Yeah.
Right. So the close plan was all about me.
Yeah.
And I see there's a question by Tarek here saying, why aren't so many people doing it? Because when it's a closed plan, it's all about me. It's uncomfortable because I'm probably going to, I mean, maybe you're going to say yes, or maybe you're going to say, take a walk, and it'll be very uncomfortable. And I think it's about changing, as you said, the mindset. It's a mutual plan that you work with a customer that is really designed to make sure they're successful a year down the road. And if you think of it from that perspective, there's no hesitation to have that conversation. But when it's seen as a closed plan, I think reps are nervous because one, have they finished selling? They're worried that they're going to get a no right away, and they don't want that. So there's lots of psychology from a seller's perspective on why you don't want to put a closed plan. But if you think about it differently, you think about like it's purely as a success plan, it's very different and much easier for you to have that conversation.
Yeah,
Daniel,
I think what we're talking about, it's even more intense in very competitive markets. Like for us in education, nowadays people you can learn in YouTube, you can find millions of courses out there. So for us, it's really crucial to not just go out and sell a course just to sell it. So for us, it's crucial to build trust from day one. You know, every single call we have, we need to build trust and really discover the business pain point, so we can actually prescribe a real solution for their business. So what does your team need? What's your need in upskilling and reskilling? And build trust throughout this entire journey. You know, discovery, pain point, customer success, crucial. You know, the handoff later, and making sure the course is actually intended to, you know, deliver a result for their business, and not just one more classic course out there.
Totally. And I think this is what I was trying to get at earlier, and I think you hit the nail on the head around this, Daniel, is solutions today are much more flexible. That's what I was trying to say at the beginning of, like, there's been a change in the dynamic of, not just complexity is the wrong word. I think it's really how dynamic, and Kurios is a perfect example of this. Like, it can be so many things to so many different people, which makes it harder to self-serve and not have that, because like the value that you can provide is so much higher when you're really working with them to understand these things, because you're the expert in this new way of doing things. And that's so much more of a competitive advantage for who uses you, but it also makes it require so much more work together, right, to get to that ideal outcome. That's why I'm kind of seeing this, like, both need for collaboration, but also buyers wanting to be by themselves a lot more because of these shifts in the market, which is like such an interesting tension that is happening right now in B2B sales and success.
Especially when you have different stakeholders. In our case, also come back to education, you have the student, the end user. He has a different perspective than the HR person or than the business unit leader. So it's a real challenge. It's very interesting.
Yep, that's why it has to be flexible. The other thing I think sometimes that, again, thinking back on some failed attempts at really good success plans or mutual action plans, is making sure that you've got supporting collaboration tools, alignment meetings, whatever, internally that support that mutual action plan. So if the sales team is coming up with this way or this structure of how we're going to move through this and the information we're going to need and how we need to support it, if you then haven't set up the infrastructure to make sure they can get that support, that they can find that information, that they can respond really quickly, you're going to fail on one side of the equation. So to have a really good customer experience, you also have to have a really good internal experience, because time kills all deals. If those reps are then having to pause or missing their own dates on the mutual action plan, you're eroding that trust. So whatever you're putting out there is the way that you're running your kind of piece of the equation. Make sure it's backed up by the internal resourcing and the internal alignment meetings and otherwise, and a system that reps can trust. They know when they put this on a mutual action plan that they can live up to it, that they've got access to the people or whatever it is that they need to do, and make sure all those people that are expected to participate know that they're expected to participate. That's another place I've seen it fall down, where we paint this great picture and then it's actually on our side that we're not delivering, even though the customer has kind of gotten in there and participated. So don't forget about the internal support for the person that's outwardly facing.
Totally.
Also mentioned, I saw at Clio, as Clio grew, they started looking at the quantifiable benefit of having of success with the customer. And so we would have an all hands, you'd look at the bucket, what did you bring in? But they really focused on what also came out the bottom, and trying to find out why and what expectations, was there a good success plan set up? Now, these were smaller deals, but because of that, we actually changed the business and invested much more in customer success, so that as that person crossed the line from being a prospect to a customer, we were there to hold their hand. And we didn't, with the type of deals, it wasn't like we had these defined mutual success plans, but we thought about success. Success became important. And as a salesperson, again, I sound very greedy, but this is how I'm a salesperson. If that deal, if it wasn't successful, I would lose my commissions. So it was in my best interest and best interest of that's not just why we did it. We want the customers to be successful, but we created a culture where creating success, and it wasn't just get across the line. It was, how do I keep them for 10 years, and how do you create the resources to be there? I think that was a big part of the success of Clio, is caring about the customers and thinking about long term.
I think it was Salesforce that coined the term customers for life. So just that mentality that it's not just to get a customer, it's to get a customer for life, whether that means that company stays as a customer for a long time or whether that person buys you again and again at other places. So that investment you make up front is really an investment in a very long future with that person. That's advocacy. That's all of the things that you need for NRR. That's, referrals, all those good things. So yeah, you're investing in your commission check, but you're also probably investing in all the money that company can then spend on product, spend on all the things that are going to make it easier to sell and better to sell and bigger deals and all that good stuff. So it's, it's a little bit, just thinking a little bit broader than the deal in front of you, even though that has to happen. You're being relied on to do that. So I definitely don't want to be too altruistic around it, but it's a piece of the equation, and it definitely benefits you as a rep to have referrals, to have a set of customers that'll speak your praises and take you everywhere you go. That's a new, that's a long-term success for you.
Sales cycles are faster, right?
Yeah.
Have someone else doing the work for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think Salesforce and Clio both did a very good job of building successful customer base who were advocating when we weren't there.
Yep.
For sure. And I got a question for, maybe I'll throw this out to the audience too, if they want to add this to the chat. But I think generally over the last how many decades we've been working on computers, even before then, with like physical pieces of paper, people would bring up these plans and who does what and all that kind of stuff, collaborating with customers. I think that there's a strong alignment with sales leadership and executives on these things. We want to create customers for life. We want to do all these things. Personally, I think a lot of the breakdown is the execution. Like, at the end of the day, when you need a rep to have a conversation with a customer, like that interaction, I think, is the reason why you don't have this as a set standard. Like, why every time you talk to a considered purchase in the B2B world, or you get introduced to an onboarding specialist or CSM or AM, why isn't there, hey, this is what we're going to do together today, tomorrow, the next day, expectations, this is going to be involved on your side, my side. I think I'd be curious to get everyone's thoughts on this. So yeah, if you're listening, please add this to the chat. We'll go around here with the panelists, but what is kind of the number one or two reason why you don't see this as the set standard in sales and success today? And I'm going to throw out my opinion after working on this problem the last 2.5 years with Accord. Again, I have never talked to a sales leader or a CEO or top rep who has said this hurts the deal, or this doesn't like net incredibly impact in a positive way the company and the customer and myself. I think where it falls down is most reps struggle to have the conversation and make the ask. Most reps, the classic saying, one of my favorite sayings in sales is get a yes or get a no, maybes kill you. And I think most reps, 80-90% of reps, are afraid to get that no. And that is why they can't have this conversation of saying, this is where we're at today, this is what we're going to do tomorrow, this is what the whole partnerships looks like. Because they know, they ask the question about getting that executive involved in the conversation, they might get the no. They don't care if they don't have the right stakeholders, just trying to just get that next meeting or the next call, the next email. And again, that's my personal perspective. I think people are scared and they're not trained to facilitate this type of conversation, and it ends up hurting them and the company. But that's been one of the biggest surprises, I think, from, again, working on Accord and focusing on these mutual plans, is that the end reps aren't able to have this and facilitate this kind of conversation. I think that's where the biggest up-leveling needs to happen.
Do you think it's because they don't know what happens next, or because they don't trust that it will? So they're talking outside of their area of control, and so they're reluctant to make sort of commitments about things that they aren't involved in. Because I certainly have spent a lot of time in those roles trying to get CS and sales just to be even more casually aligned, so that everybody feels very personally connected to the journey and personally connected to success stories, so that they feel like they're part of it, even if they aren't. Like, some of it to me is a fear or a trust that they're going to say something that doesn't actually get met or delivered on.
I think it's this fear of not, personally, I think it's, and a lot of managers and the best, I think, sales leaders or revenue leaders say, this is the phrase that I always hear, is we're not leading the deal. We're not being proactive. We're following. And I think it's that, the confidence of not being
prescription. They're not being prescriptive enough.
They're not. Yeah. And I think it's a lack of not knowing. And I think you need to come in and say, I don't know what's best for you, customer, because every customer I work with has their own decision-making processes, needs, whatever, but this is what works. This is what I've been, this is what I've experienced works for a lot of people. And I think they think that they have to say, this is what's going to work for you.
No, right.
And,
well, that's why like the co-creation and flexibility around it, where it's like, this is what I know works, or I've observed works, or has worked 100 times. Is that going to work for you? Or do we need to make a few adjustments? And then you're co-creating, and then it's
90% of the time they're going to be like, tell me, like, I don't know how to buy hypercontext. You've worked with people the last year or two, whatever it is. You learn from your team, but that's breakdown. But I'm curious to get, Daniel, what's your sense on this?
I liked your phrase when you said they're afraid of that no. And for us in an early stage startup, that's even more important to actually define what who your ICP is going to be, and your actual buyer persona or personas if you have more. In our case, we have several. So the importance of defining that early on, so you don't lose time with those maybes or those no's that your reps are sometimes afraid. I've been there, and it's happened to me also. You're early stage, you're trying to sell, you're trying to close, and you're afraid of those no's. But then eventually you have to learn that it's opportunity cost. You have to learn how to filter, how to attack really those people who are actually going to engage with you, love your product, and become customers for life. Especially early on, I think that takes a huge importance.
Yeah, it's counterintuitive, because the less you do it for the right customers, the more you're going to lose them, and you're going to waste time with the potential no's. But if you were coming in confident, you're going to drive. And that's why I always see that the best reps work the fewest deals, because they're doing this early. But Ryan, curious to get your take on this.
Just two observations, because I was a rep, and I didn't want to see. If it was bad news, I was just going to cross my fingers and there would be hope. But it took time for me to get to the spot to realize that wasn't helping me. It was actually creating more anxiety. So I think that partly is a cultural thing that comes from sales leadership, where you have to create an expectation that we're going to have those conversations, because we want to identify if there's a no, what's the reason, and that there's likely a response that we can go back with. Okay, we have lots of tools we can use to help. The customer's concerns there could be a number of them, and some of them you can't impact, but some you could. But without knowing, you can't go out and find the tool to actually go fix it. And so I think it's a cultural thing, it's a maturity thing. But when you're hiring young salespeople, you can't just expect they're going to pick that up. So I think sales leaders, I think executives have to understand that and create a culture where let's get to yes or no. Yes is good, no is good, maybe kills me. I've used those exact words, right? And I've actually trained my team to say that to the customer. Right? To say to the customer, listen, I want you to understand where I'm coming from. Forecasting is important to me. We want to be respectful and make sure that there's value here. I love a yes. I like a no. A maybe, if maybes doesn't work, it maybe makes me look like I'm not doing my job properly. And I find that funny. That creates a mutual plan with the customer to say, I need to give you the ability to say no.
Yeah.
Like for those who are selling,
and the honesty, the human nature of that. Saying you're on a call with a salesperson, and just saying that, hey, my job is to do this. This is what benefits me. This is what benefits you. I find that goes so far in building that rapport.
Then they take a breath, and now you've already created this level of partnership, because you've already put it on the table. You've given them the ability to say no, so they don't feel bad about saying no. And now you can really find out what's going on.
True. I totally agree, Ryan, with especially the part about learn what's behind the no, so you can actually improve the team, improve the sales, improve your product. Really key.
Well, and that there's so much value there. Like no can be, the beginning of a selling conversation, but it could also just be the beginning of a learning to make a change. I think one of you mentioned that doing something then had you change everything else. Same thing. If you get a lot of no's and you start understanding what's underneath the no, that may mean there's a miss somewhere in your product offering, in whatever, and better to fix it than to keep trying to sell to a brick wall. So I think helping people earlier on in their sales career understand the value of a no, that prompting it early and otherwise, and that it's not the end. It's just it's a different pathing. It's a different fork in the road.
Yeah. And before we shift, I just want to add one last kind of fun fact in the region, maybe other parts of the world. Sometimes no's are hard to get to. People are
Yep.
it's hard for them to actually say the word no. So you have to learn how to read the no's with other words. It's that's another
giving
challenge.
them, giving them that's what I always try to do, is give people the out, is get them to, I think the best reps are always qualifying out, because they're coming in with this confidence, consultative selling, the value, and trying to teach people something and saying, hey, it doesn't work for people that are here or here or here. Does that fit? And they might like argue with you and be like, no, we're here, we want to do this thing. And that's a great way of having the conversation. But I was going to say, for all the reps or sales leaders that are out there that are thinking about, how do I do this? And is this the right approach for us? We want to make the most of every deal. The way that I try to think about it is, if it's not a yes for now, get the no for today, and what it's going to take, and when is the right time, what's the right product offering for the future, and get them to get out of this weird relationship with the sales rep and the conversation to say, hey, it doesn't sound like this is a thing we're going to get to, you're ready to say yes, whatever. What's it going to take for us to do that? They might say, hey, we need to onboard these first few people. We need this key hire. We need this. Okay, we're going to have that conversation. We're going to have 100 times better conversation when I reach out to you in 3 weeks, in 3 months, in a year, to have that kind of conversation. And the best place to find new deals is from close lost. But if you're not setting up for those conversations in that pipeline, you're diminishing that. And you can create an amazing pipeline as an individual rep or as a company if you're training folks to close out those deals for now and have a great game plan to approach them again. And that's where we've really found this inflection point from all the calls we had our first 2 years. We're developing this shitty product that we launched like within 3 months of having the idea. We're getting great feedback. People are having these conversations because they're excited about the idea, but we're not there yet for a number of reasons. Setting yourself up to have those great conversations in the future is going to exponentially build your growth. And it goes along with these mutual plans. Hey, saying, these are all the things. Does this make sense? Where is this going to fall? Okay, cool. We're going to come back when that makes sense. And yeah, it's just the comfort with the no's that we're kind of talking about, which is an interesting path that this conversation has gone down.
Well, but you can get a no in the mutual action plan. If they're unwilling to engage and reveal some of their part of the equation, that's maybe also a really good path for inquiry around, actually, this is a no, because there's something on that mutual action plan that they're never going to do, or that they can't, or whatever the case. But having something to react to, and having a shared vision that you're trying to get to, and as opposed to making up your own story or guessing at it, having something concrete that you can react to, I think is also a little less scary for, I think, the reps. They're not creating something, they're validating, or inquiring deeper into something, right? So you're not sort of asking questions into thin air. You've got a concrete thing to say, is this something you're prepared to do? You're not? Why not? When would you be prepared to do that? What's stopping you from being able to do that, right? It just gives you more areas of inquiry that are practical and helpful and are based on what you already know works.
Totally. Well, just a quick time check. We have about 3 more minutes. I see there's a few questions, which if we can't get to right now, I promise Nick in the Q&A and some other questions in the chat, we can follow up on and take note. But if anyone wants to jump in on that, Daniel, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I'll do maybe number 1. Is there a minimum ACV where the time investment in a mutual plan becomes worth it? I'll talk about early stage companies or teams. You don't really have like a threshold. You're constantly learning. I don't think we have an actual formal protocol for when it's worth it and when it's not. On top of that, there's an extra challenge where in education, how do you demo a course? That's kind of a tricky question also, that we're trying to improve constantly. So that's, when do you really do the mutual plan? After they do a sort of demo, or afterwards? And for now, we're trying to really not set an actual ACV. We're trying to learn more about customers. Our segment is enterprise, so it should be worth it from the start.
If you're in the enterprise segment in general, there's probably some ACV.
But if sometimes we have some customers from more startup or tech or smaller teams, so that could be debatable.
The time to fill it out is a good question, because I think probably a really good mutual action plan is progressive. As you learn, as they learn, So you may be the act of revisiting it and filling in now what you know, or using it as a way to send people to find the right information. I think if you can start it from day one, because you have an idea of what it should be, as Ross said, you're kind of teaching them what works. You'll continue to edit and augment it as you go. And what an amazing artifact for your implementation team, for your customer success team. And if the customer experiences that plan truly does travel with them, that's just an amazing customer experience. So it shouldn't end, and hopefully it's progressive and builds.
Ryan, any parting thoughts?
Yeah, my comment is we're talking about a tool and a thought process for a salesperson, for an organization. And I think this is part of, but what I think is this helps is create a sales team that is confident, that is assured of success, right? That can be more calm, can be, I always say, I use this analogy, it can be like a barber. When you go to a barber, if you ask the barber for a haircut that's bad, they're going to tell you, no, don't do it this way. I'm an expert. I do this every day. And there's a confidence that comes with that if you have that confidence with your sales team, these conversations become natural. Success becomes natural. And I think this is about changing culture and the way your people approach their customers.
Well, this conversation and your input honestly is like making me question all of our like product positioning and marketing, all this kind of stuff, because I love the sense of talking about getting the know. I think is so important. It's something that's ubiquitous, and looking for ways to do that, because I think every sales leader and organization is looking to work with more of the right fit and right now. And how do you make sure you're investing the time with your team's resources to do that? And this feels like a really great way of doing that. And I love the vibe, Ryan, when you can think about yourself in the barber chair and like, oh, do you want the straight line? You want this? Like, you're the expert. Like, you do this all day. Like, I'm not going to make any of these decisions. And having someone on the other side that can help you do that as a buyer, I think is the goal. And, one parting thought as well is, in sales, you're never really trying to convince someone to do something, right? You're there on the other side to help them accomplish whatever their goal is with what you have. And I think this kind of way of working with customers is the right framework and philosophy to do that, right? You're not pitching, you're not doing the hard sell. This is what it would be like to work together. If you want to collaborate on this thing, this is what we do. This is what we help you with. This is the path. If not, all good. And it drives that confidence, Ryan, that you're mentioning. But appreciate everyone joining, especially panelists. I know probably 1,000,001 emails to respond to and Slacks and things you could be doing instead of this. So really appreciate you sharing with the community. We're going to be sharing the recording, so anyone who's listening can share with their team. We're going to have our amazing content specialist, Adrian, draft up some kind of key takeaways and stuff. So if you want to share with other folks that might find this valuable, we're going to do that. But again, Jocelyn, Daniel, Ryan, appreciate you taking the time, and everyone out there, appreciate you listening in.